Welcome to the podcast, the Tech Ketchup Show, a Nerd for Tech Originals. And I hope we have a great conversation today and we bring some value to the table through this conversation. And first of all, let me introduce Chinmay Mishra, sir. He is founder and CEO of Wholive. He has been the founder and CEO of Alice Health, and he had a successful exit from it. So we would be interacting with him today and would be knowing a lot of stuffs about entrepreneurship, his journey, his startups, both his startups, the story of both his startups. So welcome, sir, and thanks a lot for taking out time from your busy schedule and joining us for this interaction.
Thank you, Kushagra, for having me over. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. For beginning of the conversation, I would like to understand from you when you look from today, like when you retrospect your time when you started, or maybe beyond that from your childhood, do you find some of the dots that connect you to the kind of person that you have been shaped, and how do you see yourself getting to the point that you are right now? How do you introspect about that time?
No, absolutely, Kushagra. I think the values and the traits that we imbibe during our formative years while growing up, I think that remains with you and you carry it to your professional life as well. So, personally, I come from a background of educationalists. A lot of my father was a professor at NIT Roorkela all his life and stuff. So I come from a family of engineers and doctors, and who placed a lot of value on education and learning and being patient with whatever we take up. I think those are some of the traits, Kushagra, that not only did I carry in my professional life and my entrepreneurial journey, but I think also they have shaped me up to the way that I am today. Just to give you one small example, Kushagra, is I generally, I don't get too overexcited when there is something successful which is happening. At the same time, I do not get too despondent when things do not go right. So, and this is something that even a lot of my investors have also come back to me and asked that, hey, Chinmay, do you do kind of yoga or meditation? How can you be so level-headed in either of those situations? But I think that is something, Kushagra, that just comes to me. That's the way that I have been raised up, not to get overexcited or over sad. So you're very right. Some of those traits we carry in terms of our patience and ability to be patient with things, especially in an entrepreneurial journey where, there could be weeks where nothing happens, and there could be a day when weeks happen. All right. So it's very crucial to be patient, to be disciplined. And yeah, there is something that you carry from your childhood, but not to say that those are the only ways or formula for being successful. Everyone have their own traits, their strengths and the weaknesses, but definitely they play a very big role here, certainly.
So before you started your entrepreneurial journey and before you founded Alice Health, you had been in the corporate sector for a while, and you knew how the organization works, how the companies actually function on different levels. So my question to you is, what do you feel like? There must be certain advantages that the entrepreneur who has been in a corporate world beforehand and had been on the other side of the window gets certain advantages when he or she is starting their entrepreneurial journey. So I would like to know those advantages which you feel an entrepreneur has when they have a certain background of corporate, and are there actually any disadvantage that a person could get when due to his
Now, in my professional journey, before I started being an entrepreneur and all this else, I worked with only two companies. One was a few $1 billion company. I joined Infosys and moved to US for about 10 years or so. Worked with a company called 8 US Healthcare through Infosys. So there I got a taste of a large corporate culture. And then after post my MBA, I worked with a slightly smaller firm, setting up their product division in the US and stuff. So I got a flair of the startup world, kind of small company. And from each of those two, I had something or the other to learn. Now, from a big corporate, you learn about how a company goes about building its culture. When you're employing 5,000, 10,000 people, there is a certain culture that you have built, and you need to, we get to know how they have gone about building that culture. Right. That's one. And secondly, when we're talking about a $15, $20 billion company, you also get to learn about what are the kind of processes they have in place, what are the kind of steps they have taken to go from say 0 to a 15 billion, right? So you look at their growth trajectory and there's a lot to learn. Similarly, when you look at the smaller company that I work with, where I was setting up pretty much their product division, there you get a different set of advantages where you now get to know how do you work yourself, or how do you work within those constraints with regards to budget, right? Constraints with regard to the manpower that you have, constraints with regard to how much luxury you can have with your customers, right? When you are with an IBM and a customer says, hey, I need this and that to be done, you can very well push back and say, this will be done only in 3 months' time. But when you are in a slightly smaller firm and a customer asks something, you have to treat that as, as urgently as it can. So both of these things. And then the other, when you're looking at a smaller company, the other thing that you also learn is how do you kind of encourage people to work with you even without all the frills and the thrills of working in a large corporate, right? How do you find the right talent who is more willing to work in a startup culture and give up a lot of things which he or she might otherwise get in a larger company, right? So you get a flair of that as well, how to build a team with all these constraints, right? So those are the advantages definitely you come with when you're then starting your own venture. On one hand, how you want to proceed, how you want to grow your company, the culture you want to set. On the other hand, how to work within those constraints, right? Exactly. So those are the benefits, certainly, Kushagra. On the downside also, yes, this is by no means a template that if you have worked here, worked in these kind of settings, then definitely you would be a more successful entrepreneur. I don't think that is necessarily true. If that would have been a template, then everyone would have followed that, right? Exactly. Because what happens on the negative side of it, Kushagra, is that when we have worked with these companies and then we start our own venture, you could say maybe we develop certain biases, till the time we actually start our own venture. We develop biases with regards to how do we want to scale? How do we want to raise funds? What are the kind of people that I want to hire? We may not be aware of it all the time, but those biases get built in us, right? Okay. Now, in a large company, I might want to hire a lot of people who do not go against me or do not say no to me, right? Because my growth trajectory in a corporate depends on how many yes men I have, a bit of a psychophancy. Now, I might be inherently carrying that bias with my startup. When I look to recruit people in a startup, the startup world works completely differently, is that you need to hire people who are challenging you at every step. And that's what keeps you in check. But coming from a big company culture, I might start hiring people who are again yes men, right? So one is that you come in with certain biases. The second could be also that maybe because of these experiences, you start to think within a certain framework, within a certain box, and you don't really push yourself outside of that box, outside the comfort zone, because you always fall back on your experience and say, look, where I was working, this is how they had done. So I'm going to do it in a similar way, right? Whereas the contexts are very different. As they very rightly say, Kushagra, is that when you are inside a bottle, you cannot read the label.
Exactly.
Right? Wow. And that's what happens. So maybe, right? So maybe people who are starting for the first time, don't have any corporate experience or large, significant experience and launching their own ventures. Maybe the advantage they have is that they are starting from a very clean canvas, right? There's no biases. There is no box to, kind of box their thoughts in. So maybe their creativity and ingenuity could be much more than someone who is coming in with a corporate experience. So there are these pros and cons, Kushagra. Again, I think it comes down to, am I able to just pick the ones that I feel are the good part of my experiences and then build on it? Or, am I carrying everything with me and, falling into a trap of being biased and so on? So It's a fine balance. There are definitely no right or wrong way to go about it. It's just, the way it is, right? Some of us first take a corporate life and then get into entrepreneurship. And I think it's becoming more and more fashionable these days to jump into entrepreneurship without experience. And that wasn't so much the case when we started 10 years back. As simple as that.
Exactly. As you mentioned, the pros and cons of this particular point, when you thought of beginning your entrepreneurial journey, or when you thought of doing your own venture, what kind of change in mindset did happen to you during that period, which helped you in pushing yourself and going and starting your own venture? Also, I would like to know from you, was there any point before that when you actually started that you had this thought, but you had to it was just a thought, you didn't take any action, or there were certain circumstances which didn't allow you to take action. So what was that change in mindset that happened to you personally while you actually set out your foot in this entrepreneurial journey?
I think one of the good things that happened to me, Kushagra, without knowingly or unknowingly, is that when I was in the US and I was working with this client, I think by that time I had significant experience in the health space. So at one point, I think when at that point in time when you're talking about 2005, 2006, that's the time when even the entrepreneurial spirit in the US, and you started hearing a lot about startups and so.
Yeah.
So I think that startup bug had bit me at that time. And my entire decision to go to Babson, which is considered the mecca of entrepreneurship, Babson College in Boston, I think it was a very conscious choice on my part that I wanted to come back to India and start something of my own. And I wanted to move from a technology consulting and a background to something more business driven and strategic thinking. That's the whole reason I went to Babson. And when I went to Babson, I definitely had something in mind, which I wanted to do post, my MBA and coming back. But I think a year down the line in the MBA program, that was out of the window. The more, you learned about various techniques of analyzing an idea. And, when I started applying the same to my own idea, I realized that there was a lot of, loopholes and gaps in that. So I think by the end of the second year of my program, that idea was out of the window. So then I joined this smaller company, again, with a very conscious decision of actually learning how the startup thing works or how a small company operates, the things that I mentioned to you before. So I think it was fairly, very rewarding job, I would say, not just monetarily, but I was working with an amazing, incredible gentleman who had founded this company. So I was working with him directly, and every time I interacted with him, there was something or the other for me to learn. And that actually made, Kushagra, my decision to leave that company much tougher, because I was learning so much. But I think, very funnily, it was in 2012, towards the mid of 2012, when one day the gentleman, the CEO, he walks into my cabin, and then he just stands there and says, he looks at me and says, Chinmoy, what's wrong? So I think, I just I don't know where I drew the courage from, Kushagra, but I looked at him and he said, sir, I'd like to move on. I don't remember where it was. I think it says that all that you need in your life is 5 seconds of bravery, right?
Yeah.
I think he could sense that I was not at ease. So something else I was looking at, and even I felt that somehow I drew that courage, and I said, sir, I'd like to move on, and that's essentially how I jumped into the world of entrepreneurship. And the first few months, Kushagra, are extremely tough. So for everyone looking at entrepreneurship as a career path, you need to ensure a few things. One is that it's an incredible leap of faith. You are foregoing your well-paid job, your monthly salaries, the leaves and the luxury of flying out to any place that you want to, vacationing. So you're foregoing all of that, and you are getting onto a path which is extremely unpredictable. So it's a huge leap of faith. So for the first few months, Kushagra, it becomes extremely tough when you do not have that, monthly check coming in. The last day of the month, you're still kind of logging into your bank account to see if you're getting money from somewhere. And the second part of it is that when you start looking at this journey, I think what one should do is look at the support system that they have. Because at the end of the day, when you are going through the downs, the ups and the downs, and more the downs, right? It is your support system, your family, your spouse, your parents. They are the ones that you can count on, for anything. So if you are struggling with building a support system, if you are struggling financially, your family is struggling financially, then my 2 cents would be, wait for the right time. A lot of people say that, hey, look, if you are waiting for it, the right time never comes. But, that's something, Kushagra, I slightly disagree on, especially in an Indian ecosystem. In US and Western world, it's still very true that, and simply because the differences between the two worlds is that in US, you might jump into an entrepreneurship field, and if you fail, you still have multiple options open for you. Because failure there is still kind of respected. But in India, if you are starting something without financial security and you fail, then it's very tough for you to get back into a job market. And people also, because we do not celebrate failure, people tend to look down upon it. That, hey, look, he tried to do something, she tried to do something, and it didn't work out. So he or she might be bad. So I think there is a contextually it's different. So people who are looking to start, I think ensuring that you have a good support system and ensuring that you have adequate financial, you could say, cushion for any kind of adverse situation in your life or your family's life, that becomes very critical in our context, Kushal. So, I had, fortunately by God's grace, I had that second part of it pretty well covered, and maybe that's the reason I could take that plunge much easier manner than it is to some other people.
You define something which is quite fancied upon in India currently, the word of startups and all, and we sometimes miss out certain points, and emotionally how much we get motivated rather than the correct reasons for getting motivated. The kind of motivation that we are getting is due to the emotions coming from inside. So you very well quite defined it that the context in USA or in the Western world is quite different from the kind of scenarios that we have in India. You have spent a lot of time building your startups and working in the corporates, and you have had your taste of both the cultures, like what goes in other countries and what goes in India. Why do you feel is this particular practice actually of not celebrating failures, that mindset of looking down when someone fails? Why do you think is that kind of mindset build, like why that kind of mindset prevails in India? Because when we see a lot of Indians succeeding outside, there are certain things that we can learn, and we need to learn from them, so that we could develop that kind of culture and that kind of environment surrounding mindset in India as well. So
absolutely.
How do you go about this point? Like, how do you go about the change in mindset that happens and the various reasons due to which it happens?
I want Kushal completely. I won't throw the baby with the bathtub when it comes to startup culture in India. Correctly, I think a lot is changing and changing for the good. You will see a lot of corporates who actually hire people who have been entrepreneurs before, and even in our own startup, when we look at CVs of people who had started their own businesses, maybe for some reason it didn't work out, we actually encourage and try to get them on board. So I think the mindset is changing, but where we are coming from, Kushagra, is that, hey, look, we are still a pretty young country when it comes to compared to the Western world. How many years of our independence and so on, and we have been predominantly a job-oriented economy, right? Where you graduate, you either pursue your engineering, your doctor, your medicines, so that you can get a good job, right? And that's how our wealth creation has been. The whole world of entrepreneurship, the entrepreneurial ecosystem, I won't say that it's new. It has already been there. Always been there in the country. But if you look at it, it's always been restricted to a certain community, right? Like the way we call it the Banyas or the Marwadi community. We almost say that if you are a Banya or a Marwadi, you need to start your own business. But if you're anything else, you need to be an engineer or a doctor and take up a job. So I think that's also driven by the fact that the opportunities in our country were limited. So it was always a mad rush to be the first in the queue, to get a job, to get a seat in an engineering college, to get first rank in the school, so that those opportunities, with the scarce opportunities, become available to the first few who are in the queue, right? And if you're not in the first 5 who get that opportunity, if you're the 6th or the 7th, then automatically the stigma was that, hey, look, you are not good enough. Okay. Right? But we didn't consider that maybe the opportunities aren't there for all the 10 people. It's only there for the 5. But I think that mindset is definitely changing, Kushagra. A lot and more people are becoming open to the world of startups and entrepreneurship. And I think I would give a lot of credit to some of the wonderful startups we have in our country, like the InMobis, the Flipkarts, Zerodha, Zoho, and even if you go back a little bit, Infosys, HCL Tech. So these guys actually brought that revolution and showed to our previous generations too that, look, this could be a legitimate career choice. Not simply as a pastime or as pure indulgence. It's a legitimate career choice. So I think that is where things are changing and improving, right, Prashant? And it will take time, but we are definitely reaching there where at some point in level, we would also be starting to celebrate failures, because one of the things personally I maintain always, Kushagra, is that an entrepreneur never fails. The company might fail or succeed, but an entrepreneur never fails, right?
Exactly.
Just the very fact that you had the courage to take that leap of faith, it's more important to cross the starting line, more difficult rather to cross the starting line than the finish line. The very fact that you have taken that step, that itself shows that what you are made up of. So things are changing for the good, Kushagra, and I think with more and more success stories, more unicorn stories, by next 5 to 10 years, I think this will become almost mainstream, for a lot of people.
Exactly. First of all, you founded Allins Health, which was in the domain of healthcare sector.
Right.
Then you shifted to a bit of hospitality and kind of thing with WhoLive. These two domains, what I, from the personal knowledge and the domain of my knowledge, I feel that these two fields, when you look from starting a business and building something, are quite different from it. So how challenging was it for you to have that shift of paradigm in domain when you shifted from a healthcare sector to a hospitality sector and started your business? And there must have been certain learnings from it which you were very sure of from your first startup, that okay, these are certain things, or these are certain things which I should or should not do when I'm starting a new venture of my own. So could you please elaborate over this point?
Absolutely. Very, very interesting point again, Kushagra. Yes, the spaces are very different, as radically different as they could be. And when we started, healthcare was something that came very naturally to us, because that's what we had been doing all our professional career. So that came very naturally to us. And then when we moved into a real estate and hospitality space, we did not have, we were not aware of the nuances of that space, how that space operates and how do we make a name for ourselves there. But again, at the same time, Kushagra, the very fact that we didn't know that space meant that we came in with a very open mind and we were willing to learn. And we had the confidence in us, given the exit that we had before. We were very confident of, again, taking something from scratch and building $1 million business out of it. Right. So I think that confidence we had, and there was, as you very rightly said, that there were a lot of mistakes that we did in our previous venture. There were definitely, times we could have done differently, things we could have done differently, decisions which we could have taken differently. Just like anybody else, we did a lot of mistakes. So when we started our next venture, we knew that some of those mistakes aren't to be repeated. We had learned our fair share of lesson from the previous mistakes. So I think you could say that we started fairly more confident of our abilities and the way we wanted to go about it, right? The other part to that question, Kushagra, is that, I personally believe that maybe it's real estate or health tech or agri-tech, ed tech, your domain could be very different, but some of the fundamentals of building a business remains pretty much the same. The way that the discipline that you want to have in your business, the way you interact with your colleagues, the way you interact with your customers, the way you go about fundraising, the way that you focus on unit economics, profitability. I think those are some of the fundamental concepts that we try to carry from our previous venture, and it's applicable to any space that you go to. Some of these foundational things which help you build a startup, the way that you building your team, go about building your team, stuff. Those pretty much remain the same, Shah, right? It's more of the domain which is different. And if it is different and you are unaware of it, it gives you a great opportunity to learn something new, right? So that's how the transition took place. I wouldn't say that it has been a struggle for us. We were fortunate enough to get a good real estate group on board as a strategic partner and an investor to us fairly early on. So we had the chance to talk to them and learn a lot from them as well. So the more and more we are getting into it, the more we're realizing, Kushagra, is that a lot of things remain the same. It's only you could say the top 20% which differs from domain to domain.
Also, so you had a successful exit from your previous startup. So for the sake of learning for the audiences, could you just explain what does a successful exit from a startup means? And then how challenging is it for a founder or co-founder to have a successful exit from a startup in looking in the current setting of Indian startups today?
So Kushagra, if you look at any venture, right, the funded venture, so there are a few key stakeholders, right? You have I always put my team or my colleagues first. So that's the first stakeholder you have. The second is your customers. The third is your investors. and the fourth is definitely you and your promoters group, right? So there are the four big stakeholders in that order, I would say. And when I talk about a successful exit, it means that you have been able to create value for each of these stakeholders, right? So when I take it one by one, if I take the case of my team, you give an example, Kushagra, there were some kids we had hired when we had just started out. We were paying them, we couldn't afford to pay them salaries of say more than 7 to 8,000 or 10,000 maybe a month, right? Post acquisition, in 5 years' time, the same guys are now getting a 70 to 80K take home, right? So that's the kind of difference that has been brought to their life. That's the value addition that, by God's grace, we were able to bring to their lives, right? So they are one. Secondly, with regards to our customers. Now, specifically in our case, once the acquisition happened, we suddenly had access to a much wider talent pool. We had access to much more capital. So the way that we could service our customers, the way we could enhance our product for them, that went up manifold, right? So our customers benefited a lot. Then the third one is your investors. Now, the investors, for all the good reasons, they are putting in money because they are expecting some returns, right? So we were able to give them a fairly good return in 3 years' time. In fact, a pretty good return, all cash exit to our investors. So we created value there too. And because we created value for our investors there, Kushagra, and the fact that we built a good karma with them. So when we were looking to raise funds for Wholiv, when these investors went back to them and for a due diligence, I think we passed that with flying colors because we had created value from them. We multiplied their wealth, right? Exactly. And finally, it comes to the team. Now, the promoters team, right? Now, the promoters team, 5-6 years together, you have seen more downs. You have sacrificed a lot. You have missed out on that vacation. You have missed out on the salary and all that. So then, you figure out whether that acquisition is rewarding for you as well or not. And fortunately, in our case, it was very rewarding. So for all these four stakeholders, Kushagra, we could create value. And that's how I define a successful acquisition, right? And I'm sorry, Kushagra, I missed the second part of your question.
I was asking, I was wanting to elaborate over this point only, how challenging it is for a founder or a co-founder in current scenario of Indian startup to have a successful exit from their own ventures.
It is happening. It is happening, also, Kushagra, not with the frequency or the rate that we expect, but it is happening. Unfortunately, it is slightly, you could say, smaller scale, so it passes under the radar. Unless it's a very huge exit, you don't get to hear about it much. But that doesn't mean that they are not happening. So it is happening definitely. It is a tough thing when you look at a successful acquisition because, as I said, unless you are able to create value for at least three of those four stakeholders, someone or the other is going to object to the whole acquisition or the exit and say, "Why do we need to do this?" Exactly. Right. Exactly. So at least if you have a check mark for three of the four boxes, you can still manage to convince the fourth one and say, "Look, this is something that is benefiting a lot of stakeholders, so let's go ahead with it." And the other part also, Kushagra, is that when we are starting out our own ventures, 8 out of 10 cases, we don't start out with an intent to exit, right? We start out with an intent to take it public. I think if you ask me about Wholiv, what's your long-term goal? The first thing that I'll mention is IPO, right? And that's true for majority of serious entrepreneurs, right? So exit is something that, comes to you, or that opportunity comes to you almost, you don't know when it is around the corner, right? So you don't build a business just for an acquisition or an exit. You build a business to create value for all stakeholders. And if that means that someone is approaching you for an acquisition with a good offer, that's an incidental benefit, right?
Great. When you had your successful exit from your first venture, had you ever thought of becoming yourself an investor? Not only in terms of monetarily aspect, but also in terms of mentorship, experiences that you had with your startup and providing it in form of mentorship only. Did you ever had that thought of becoming an investor? And even if you had that thought, why didn't you go with it? Or why was this thought of again starting your own venture and building everything by yourself came from?
No, we did. In fact, all the four of us, we evaluated also post our exit. We evaluated a few startups and we wanted to invest, come in as angel investors and stuff. Personally, where the challenge comes, Kushagra, is that any venture that I pick up, I pick up a pitch deck to evaluate, or hear their stories, I think, the first thing that I start figuring out mentally is what are the things that they're doing wrong. And that's something that again comes from our experience that, hey, we did these 5 things wrong and these guys are also doing something, on similar lines and it is equally wrong. So it became at one point when we were evaluating, it became very difficult for us to keep our minds open and the biases aside and purely judge a deck or a startup from purely its merit. There was always a comparison with what we were doing. And so that's the reason we said that, maybe angel investing is not something our cup of tea. And also, Kushagra, that led me to actually have much deeper respect for the angels who had invested in us. Because once you are on that side of the table, that's when you realize how difficult it is to part with your money, even if it's a small ticket. And when you talk about angels who are meeting you for the first time and investing, 1 CR, 1.5 CR of their hard-earned money, you have deep respect for them. So that's the reason, Kushagra, we stayed away from the angel investing space. In terms of the mentorship, I'm currently mentoring a lot of startups. I wanted to give back something to my state of Odisha, so I'm mentoring a few startups from Odisha. I'm mentoring an edtech startup based out of Delhi. So I help them out completely in a pro bono. I have no expectations of any returns, but I just help them in the way that I could. I connect them to investors in my community, help them evaluate the pitch deck and stuff. So that's where we are. And last part of it, Kushagra, why again a second venture? I think it's entrepreneurship is very, very addictive. Once you have started your own venture, it's very difficult for you to go back to a job. It's extremely addictive and you just can't live without it. The adrenaline, that rush that you have every now and then, the excitement that you live, the world of uncertainties, I think it's very difficult to get away from that. Even though you know that maybe the life other side could be much more rewarding financially at least, but the world of entrepreneurship is absolutely rewarding when it comes to your whole changing you as a person. I mean, entrepreneurship changes you as a person, right? Joy of creating something from scratch. That is, unparalleled. So I think that's the reason we thought of starting something again. It's purely an addiction.
Great. So, also, so I would wish to know, how did this idea of WhoLive actually came from? And we have discussed in this podcast that you were doing something in the healthcare sector. Then, how did you figure out the problem statement here? How did you come across this?
I don't think, Kushagra, we had a big eureka moment, as such, but post our, once we moved out, post the acquisition, about, helped them with a year with the transition, and then we moved out. So we were looking for some other big ideas, and maybe we came across few students who mentioned about their experiences while staying in some of the North Campus facility in Delhi and all that. And that kind of gave us an idea that, hey, why don't we look around this co-living and shared accommodation. One of the things that has always fascinated me, Kushagra, is that I firmly believe that going forward, it's going to be a shared economy. Whether it is, in terms of driving, you have the shared cars, in terms of even real estate ownership is now a shared ownership. So I think I was very bullish on the shared economy, and that kind of almost pushed us towards this space of shared accommodation. And when we looked at shared accommodation, there were 2 segments, essentially, you could say big segments. One is you talk about shared accommodation for executives or working professionals, young couples who are moved to a city, they don't want to own an asset because they don't have any plans of staying there. So they look at shared accommodation. The other one is the student part.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we could relate more to the student part because all of us have been through that phases in our life. And we know the challenges and the struggle that comes with student housing. And so that almost pushed us towards the student housing segment, Kushagra. And then we realized, the more we went deeper into that, we realized that, hey, look, this is actually a huge virgin space. There are not many people who are into this space. Even if they are predominantly focused on the metros, the tier 1 larger cities. Whereas when you look at our focus areas, which is slightly the smaller cities, the non-metros, that's a gold mine, right? So I think the more and more we started exploring this space and researching it, we figured that, hey, look, this could be a very, very interesting space and something that we do have the appetite to take it up. So that's how the trajectory went.
Great, sir. So now this would be the last one for this podcast. I wish to know the kind of fear when you started your entrepreneurial journey, or when you were about to begin your entrepreneurial journey, the kind of fear that you had back then, I personally believe that fear is something that will remain with you, like even if you reach to a certain level of spirituality and calmness of
Absolutely.
mind. Fear is an element that will remain with you. It is your
Absolutely.
response to fear that changes over the period of time. So, how has your fear that was when you were starting your entrepreneurial journey and now the difference between the fear that you have when you are starting
Mhm.
something new, how that
Yeah.
has been like completely different for you?
It has very, very rightly said, Kushagra, that fear always remains. Even 10 years in this journey, the fear is always there. And as you very rightly said again, that it is fear that helps you make wiser decisions and also cover your bases to a lot of extent, so you don't expose yourself to unnecessary risks. I think that's fear is what drives those, is motivating that. But yes, the way that you deal with fear changes over a period of time, or rather, Kushagra, what you term as fear or what you are fearful of, that
Exactly.
changes over a period of time, right? So
Exactly.
when we are starting out, I think we were afraid of when we read about some of our competitors raising, say, a huge fund, right? Or one of the people that we were targeting as our customer going ahead with our competitor. Those were the kind of things that we were very afraid of. We were fearful of that. We were fearful of missing out on salary payments to the people that we had hired. How do we generate their salaries? How do we always hoping that we don't miss out on those things. But gradually over a period of time, and as we said today, Kushagra, when I read about my competitor getting funding, or I read about someone else tying up with something else, I'm no longer scared of that, or I'm no longer fearful of that, because being in this space, you start to know, or you start to read between the lines. You know that what you read is not what is in reality. There is a lot of things happening in the background, which maybe the startup media or the general social media community misses out on. So you know that when you are in this, you'll know a lot of things which happen behind the scene, right? So you're no longer scared of that. You're no longer scared of the fact that, hey, look, if it's a $10 billion industry, I don't mind being the 10th largest in a $10 billion industry. I don't need to be the first. I don't need to be the largest, right?
Point.
So in a way, then what you're doing is you kind of filter yourself out to all this noise, and you stop those noises affecting you, and you're rather focused on what you are doing, and you try to do that the best of your ability, right? But then certain fears always remain, as you rightly said. It's fear about disappointing your customers, disappointing your investors, your team members, or not being able to lead your team successfully. I think those will always remain with us, Kushagra. But yes, there are a lot of things which you're fearful of 10 years back. You just take it in a stride and say, hey, look, I know the ground realities. So, I'll take that in a very different way than what someone who is outside the space might, look at it and, kind of interpret.
Great, sir. Awesome. Thanks a lot, sir, for joining for this podcast. And I hope you enjoyed yourself in this
I
conversation.
did.
Thanks a
I
lot, sir,
did,
for joining.
Tushar. Beautiful, 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 points that you brought up, and it was lovely speaking with you.
Thanks a lot, sir. It was completely our pleasure. And we would be looking forward to more such interactions. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Tushar. Take care and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.